If the action and unspoken direct changes that she is proposing was a real danger to the elites that she actually serves, she would not be invited to speak at high-profile international events.
Well, she has two very politically active parents.
Her father is an actor and her grandfather is an actor/director.
We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
Performance.
Когда детей и подростков кто-то использует в своих интересах, это достойно только.
I think she's being abused mercilessly.
Her unhealthy obsession is being used to drive home a message that fulfills specific political and financial goals. Global wealth redistribution and massive reshuffles in the developed world's energy sector are two very clear agendas being driven alongside a program of social engineering and deindustrialization proposals for the West.
Something has changed. Young protesters are getting more and more attention. Here's why.
Kids today are going to be well moving into adulthood. And so you've got to get them first. You've got to get them indoctrinated by the time they become adults so that they will be putty in your hands.
The plan is to adjust the education system, preparing children to believe in things, stop them from being able to critically analyse and to discern, so they take on ideas of the system to fulfil an agenda in the future.
And this is what Greta has become, the patron saint of the climate cult.
I have Asperger's syndrome. I'm a bit different from everyone else.
In fact, you called your Asperger's, you called it a superpower, a gift.
To have some kind of neurotypical diagnosis and to be neurodiverse. Because that makes you different, that makes you think differently, and especially in such a big crisis like this when we need to think outside the box and who aren't like everyone else. Without my diagnosis, this wouldn't have been possible, because then I would have been just like everyone else.
But she says she's just a normal girl who misses her sister and her dogs.
But I'm bad for not bowing down and genuflecting at the feet of Gaia goddess Greta.
And now she's become a really big role model for a lot of people. Who has inspired thousands, maybe even millions of people to stand up for both themselves and the climate.
What we have here is a gathering, global, religious cult.
I think this movement could become very big, and I think that we have just seen the beginning.
And like all cults, all religions, it's not based on fact, it's based on faith.
And this climate oracle, this prophet, is a way to sell you a superstition with raw emotions and frustrations of a child. They do this so that the message will bypass your rational modalities. It's all manipulation.
You're a grown man and you're attacking a child. Shame on you. She's trying to do what she thinks is right. And by the way, now relax, skinny boy. I got this. Okay, you're attacking a child. You're a grown man. Have some couth.
I'm not. I'm attacking the left for exploiting a mentally ill child.
Maybe on your podcast, you get away and say whatever you want because nobody's listening. You're on national television. Be a grown-up when you're talking about children. She's trying to save the planet because your president doesn't believe in climate change, and kids need to take to the streets to worry about their future. You are despicable for talking to her about her like that.
You can't, press a 16-year-old, can you? And that's the whole idea. You do this through a child, and they will not be demanded to support what they say as an adult would. It's a total scam.
Especially young people who will understand eventually that their future is being taken from them.
This is fear-mongering.
Young people, you are being scammed.
Children of the future will not enjoy the same lifestyle as their parents. They'll be angry. Pensions are running out. Children of the future may punish the older generation and take their pensions away. After all, why should they pay for something they will not receive, especially after the older people caused all the problem? One of the plans for the future is to make the school the de facto parent, taking more parental control and responsibility and overriding parental authority, which will be blessed by the government. The school's agenda is to slowly take this power away from the parents, and one of the ways they can do it is through the climate change agenda, if you pay careful attention. Parents and adults are bad. They are not to be trusted. Trust the school and the institution that help the students fight climate change.
Emails I've gotten are all from high school teachers. Couple from elementary, but mostly high school teachers. And the tone of these emails is borderline desperate. They are absolutely losing their minds because they feel that they are being compelled to indoctrinate youth into this type of radical Marxist, postmodernist thinking.
Systems that produce teachers have become pathological completely. They're indoctrination camps and nothing else. Children are being taught this social constructionist ideological nonsense as early as possible so that it's well set into their minds. Not so that our children learn to think critically, write clearly, or speak properly, but so they can model their mentor's destructive agenda. They don't see ideas that run contrary to their ideology as simply incorrect. They see them as integral to the oppressive system they wish to supplant, and consider it a moral obligation to stifle and constrain their expression.
Ask yourself only, what are the facts and what is the truth that the facts bear out?
The whole purpose for education is to be reorientated. The second paragraph, it says, both formal and non-formal education are indispensable to changing people's attitudes. It's normally E stands for equity, but here they have social because it means social justice, and of course environment and economy. Equity, the whole term for social justice, is really preaching the common good, not individual rights. Our children should not think of themselves as individuals. They should think of themselves as part of the collective. Economy is redistribution of wealth, global trade, public-private partnerships. How the 3 E's are being implemented. Phil Caro, who is the co-lead author of the CC Math Standards, said, the reason we have math standards is for the social justice agenda. He blatantly says that. Math textbooks are teaching politically correct attitudes such as scarcity of resources, global warming, redistribution of wealth.
Opening up with the author's declaration of what this is about. In the Our World, Our Future theme, students learn about social values that, according to Zainer Blaser, unite us as a country. Social values, social obstacles, group problem solving, and social justice. One of the first things they have them do is to learn how to use emotional words. Not fact-based words, not logic, but to persuade using emotion.
Look only and solely at what are the facts.
So teachers are reminded to tell students that when they write a call to action, they should include emotional words to get readers to feel so strongly about the problem that they want to do what is being asked of them.
The sheer volume of liberal propaganda that was pushed every single day in class this year was worse than it's ever been, and you're bullied by the teachers and every student if you dare to speak against it. Teachers at the school used totalitarian methods, particularly self-criticism sessions, which were popular among communist regimes, to enforce ideological rigidity and reinforce social cohesion. In a 10th grade AP World History class, the teacher called out Trump supporters and asked them to assure the class that they weren't racist. In this Minnesota school, like many schools across America, radical indoctrination has supplanted actual education that helps students prepare for the real world. Though a growing number of parents, students, and teachers are angry and frustrated about recent developments, they hesitate to protest publicly. Students and parents fear bullying and retaliation in terms of grades and classroom humiliation.
We will not let you get away with this. The world is waking up, and change is coming whether you like it or not.
Anyone else find that chilling?
A time of tribulation has come. A test is at hand. The final test.
I can't wait for Stephen King's sequel, Children of the Climate.
Have you noticed how these banners that some of these young people are holding are talking about, we're the ones that are going to face this, not you old people. Pull the older people away from the young. Create that divide. That's all part of this.
Emotions are now more important than fact. Students do not have the mental capacity anymore to think critically. you then have perfected a citizen for the future to be easily manipulated.
To destroy the family structure, which is the great obstacle standing in the way of the socialist utopia, to get students to reject the moral standards of their parents, and any moral standards for that matter, to promote collectivism, obedience, and all forms of social dependency and groupthink in order to eliminate all non-compliant thought with the state.
We have never invested as much in public education as we should have because we've always had kind of a private notion of children. Your kid is yours and totally your responsibility. We haven't had a very collective notion of these are our children. So part of it is we have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents or kids belong to their families and recognize that kids belong to whole communities. Once it's everybody's responsibility and not just the households, then we start making better investments.
You see what's happening with these public schools? They want them to replace the families. The schools will become surrogate parents. They're going to replace you. That's the objective here.
First one here, get control of the schools, soften the curriculum, put the party line in textbooks, emphasize the need to raise children away from the negative influence of parents, attribute prejudices, mental blocks, and retarding of children to suppressive influence of parents. Parents do not own their children. They have no natural right to control their education fully. Most youth still hold the same values of their parents. If we do not alter this pattern, if we don't re-socialize, our system will decay. A standardized curriculum of basic skills such as reading, writing, and arithmetic cannot prepare people to participate in a democracy. Enlightened social engineering is required to face situations that demand global action now. World Federation for Mental Health published this. The family is now one of the major obstacles to improved mental health and hence should be weakened. School at the age of 5 is insane because he comes to school with certain allegiances to our founding fathers, toward our elected officials, toward his parents, toward a belief in a supernatural being, and toward the sovereignty of this nation as a separate entity. It's up to you as teachers to make all these sick children well by creating the international child of the future, for conditioning the will of the people. UNESCO Handbook. As we've pointed out, it is frequently the family that infects the child with extreme nationalism. The school should therefore use the means described earlier to combat family attitudes.
Another demand of the Youth Climate Strike Group is what they're calling, quote, comprehensive climate change education. They want it for children aged 5 to 14. 5 years old? Why so young? Well, because, and again, we're quoting here, impressionability is high during that developmental stage, end quote.
My name is Greta and I want you to panic.
Not just sad, but sickening to watch images of young children in the prime of their childhood crying.
They need to think about what they are doing and what they are doing to the planet.
Some of the kids, they seem they seem whipped up into full-on distress.
Humanity is now standing at a crossroads. We must now decide which path we want to take.
But where it goes from just abuse of one child is when the mass media is starting to sell the same message of doom to the rest of the world, trying to create a global epidemic of children and adults that are hysterically believing that if we don't have a radical restructuring of the industrial, financial, and social order, now we are all going to die.
Fantastic. Look, I am not in favor of encouraging people to skip class, but if there's a cause that isn't important, this is it.
Congratulations on skipping school.
Sea levels are rising, and so are we.
Throughout the day, news anchors assured their viewers that the strike was in fact being led by the kids. They were lying, of course. Like all activist movements, the climate strike was organized by cynical adults.
And one of the most insidious aspects is that Greta herself is being used. Sincere or not, I do believe she is sincere, but clearly misinformed.
And what you don't, of course, tell these young people is that carbon dioxide, CO2, is the gas of life. Without it, we'd all be dead.
The science is settled is a made-up term.
Call me cynical, but it's not like the climate movement has a history of successful predictions. Literally, all of them have been wrong. Dire famine forecast by 75. That didn't happen. Pollution everywhere. Acid rain's going to melt everything. Didn't happen. New ice age by the 21st century. Didn't happen. Food and water rationing by 1980. Didn't happen. New ice age. Didn't happen.
How much does the sun affect Earth's climate? After all, the sun goes through all kinds of cycles and changes, so it seems like at least some of that should affect our planet too. It turns out that it does, and has for billions of years. But it's definitely not the only variable. Solar cycle. Over the course of each 11-year cycle, magnetic forces in the sun cause big variations in things like cool sunspots and explosive solar flares. It's hard to know for sure, but some of these cycles seem to match up with ancient changes in the climate.
There are people who have cultural, political, religious, economic philosophies that they then invoke when they want to cherry pick one scientific result or another. You can find a scientific paper that says practically anything.
The global temperature degree increases that they are giving us, telling us, are in fact based on fraudulent data. And this was exposed and leaked back in 2010.
A string of hacked private emails between global climate change scientists in the U.S. and Europe, which have cast doubts on the very science this summit is based on. The emails seem to show that some of the world's top experts decided to exclude or manipulate some research that didn't help prove global warming exists.
The BBC surprised some by telling their journalists they don't need to include so-called climate deniers in their stories for balance.
What happens to scientists who say that about carbon dioxide?
So there are scientists that have differing opinions and they all don't agree. But there is a real issue with pollution. There are real problems, especially as we are reaching carrying capacity of the Earth. But the solutions the elites are offering us now are not going to solve any of those issues. The countries doing most of the polluting are not being targeted in the same way that the West is, who's already doing a lot to mitigate these things. But plastic in the ocean, dangerous and altering chemicals, medications and other poisons are being dumped in the water supply, in the oceans. It's affecting humans and all wildlife in very strange ways.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
Meanwhile, a real environmental threat, plastic suffocating our oceans and seas, gets marginal attention in comparison. Because global corporate interests can't hijack it to socially engineer society and tax whatever measly disposable income we have left.
All of this with the global warming and that, a lot of it's a hoax. It's a hoax. I mean, it's a money-making industry, okay?
Is it possible to both lower emissions and build the economy? Well, to a degree that's already happened, according to World Bank data. Meanwhile, some $6 trillion in financial assets have been divested from funds linked to fossil fuels. And here, what if I told you that addressing climate change could actually be a growth industry? One study cites a $26 trillion opportunity, scaling up solar, wind, and geothermal power. Developing new batteries and public transit are all part of it.
The world is spending nearly $1 billion a day to prevent global warming. And why do so many scientists support this? Well, I'll tell you one reason. Because there is a trough of money which they can put their snouts in if they push the official line of human-caused climate change. And that trough is basically empty if you go against the official line.
The tidal wave of funding does reveal a powerful financial motive for scientists to conclude that the apocalypse is upon us. $150 billion in spending on climate change and green energy subsidies during President Obama's first term. That didn't include the tax subsidies, so add to those numbers 8 to 10 billion a year. Investors managing more than 34 trillion in assets, nearly half the world's invested capital, are demanding urgent action from government on climate change. The total climate industrial complex is a 2 trillion per year business. The world is expected to invest about $90 trillion on infrastructure in the period up to 2030.
By 2025. To do that, we would effectively have to close down the whole of British industry, wouldn't we?
We would have to totally refocus British industry. It would be a mobilisation like we did in 1939.
Chemical production would go, refining would go. What would we have left?
So the choices that we're looking at are really, really grim.
Boy, everyone is stupid except me.
The impact on human lives, not just in the West, but around the world, of what they are demanding it happens, will be catastrophic. It will destroy human society as we know it.
В Африке либо во многих азиатских странах хотят жить на таком же уровне достатка, как и в Швеции. А как это сделать? Заставить их использовать сегодня энергию солнца, которой в Африке достаточно? Кто-нибудь объяснил, что это стоит? Пойдите, объясните им, что они должны еще прозябать в нищете лет 20-30, и их дети будут в нищете. И объясните им.
So what is the solution? Number 1, stop eating meat, start eating bugs. Number 2, stop traveling. Number 3, pay more taxes, fees, and carbon offset charges. Number 4, change your light bulbs. Number 5, the West, bring in more migrants because, well, this will somehow help. And of course, number 6, a lot more feudalistic socialism. That is going to fix all of our problems. Give us all the power and the money, and we'll save you.
There is a United Nations operation called Agenda 2030, which proposes to take over control of every aspect of human life to save the world from climate change overwhelmingly.
Drive towards this Orwellian global tyranny.
Educate yourself, study, read, fact check, get real. You change yourself for a better person to make a better world. Don't wait for the government to do it for you. Eat well, cook, clean up after yourself. Don't waste stuff. Help the planet, love the planet, speak to the planet, go out of the cities and take a walk in nature. That's what you need to do.
Hey, knock it off! There's a kid back there!
I'm in danger!
Adults, you run our lives like you're Colonel Clink.
Adults, you strut around like your farts don't stink.
Adults, you're such a drooling, soaring, boozing, boring bunch. Surly, meanie, 3 martini lunchers.